Hello, my name is Eli Stroud, and my pronouns are they, them.
My name is Vicky Chareundy, and my pronouns are she, her.
My name is Michaela Dukes, and my pronouns are she and her. And our paper is titled The Foundation of Reverse Privacy Boundaries. It's an extension of Sandra Petronio's communication privacy management theory. And as the title suggests, our research expands and works within Petronio's communication and privacy management theory, or as we like to call it, CPM.
Petronio's theory explains how individuals control the spread of information. It comes with a couple assumptions, such as that private information is owned when information is shared with someone, they become co-owners. These co-owners then control further spread of the private information through negotiated privacy rules about who can know the information and when. This creates a sort of privacy boundary, which can be best explained using the illustration we have here. The individuals inside the circle are co-owners who know the private information, and they try and keep the information inside the circle so that everyone outside the circle doesn't know the private information. This causes turbulence, which occurs when these rules are broken and someone outside the privacy boundary learns the private information.
So our theory focuses on a reverse version of the privacy boundary, where everyone outside of the circle are the co-owners and they get to know the private information, and they keep it outside of the circle and away from everyone that's inside of the circle. The reverse boundary occurs when information is shared anonymously on public social media platforms. For example, someone who struggles with mental health may be driven to talk about it to seek help or solidarity, but they don't feel safe talking about it with their social circle because mental health is often stigmatized. So they post information on public platform anonymously so that they don't experience repercussions, but are still able to share their experiences with others. The general public is now aware of private information involving their mental health, but their social group isn't aware of the information or that it belongs to the individual because anonymity was used.
There are two ways that an individual can use anonymity when creating a reverse privacy boundary. The first is to use a pseudonym. The second is through audience segregation, which in this case of creating reverse privacy boundaries takes the form of having multiple accounts or platforms where individuals follow certain accounts.
Although we were able to find research on multiple examples of the reverse privacy boundary occurring, the phenomenon didn't have a name and was not the focus of the literature. We decided to call this phenomenon the reverse privacy boundary because it followed the same principles and rules as Petronio's privacy boundary, but acted in a reverse manner. Our goal for this study was to further explore this phenomenon, so we developed two research questions. Our first research question is, what rule criteria is used when deciding to create a reverse privacy boundary? Our second research question is, how do individuals react to turbulence as it occurs in the context of a reverse privacy boundary?
So for the study, we used the interview method to collect data. Interviews were selected because we relied on exploring the experiences of participants in order to glean our data, which required open questioning and flexibility. This type of interview was conducted in a semi-structured format as it allowed us to address key themes.
We applied for and received an exam review from the Institutional Review Board.
Once all our interviews were conducted and transcribed, we began the coding process by reviewing the recordings one interview at a time as a group, and we took notes on relevant statements as we watched each one. We then ascertained and took note of repeated ideas and labeled each of the themes as a different type of criteria or reaction to turbulence that was being used according to the participants' responses. Once we discovered which criteria and turbulence reactions were repeatedly used by the participants, we recorded the frequency of each one and divided the data into two separate tables for each of the research questions.
The criteria we found were used with the reverse privacy boundary were privacy motivations, which refer to the need to keep personal thoughts and opinions separate from professional or public identity. Cultural values, which involves deciding whether or not the content is appropriate to share for a certain audience. This criteria depends on the norms of privacy and openness in the given culture and what it values. There's risk-benefit ratio, which involves the using of anonymity and creating a reverse privacy boundary in order to steer away from potential harms while still gaining the benefits of sharing information. And lastly, relatability, which is used when an individual decides how, what, where, or what to post content in order to better relate to audience. As you can see from our slide, 3 of the 5 criteria used in the original privacy boundary were also used in the reverse privacy boundary. This indicates a really strong alignment between the reverse privacy boundary and the original privacy boundary.
Although that we discovered relatability as a new criteria in the context of the reverse privacy boundary, relatability could possibly occur with the original privacy boundary as a development of modern day social media usage, rather than being a unique quality of the reverse boundary. The social media CPM literature did not record criteria usage, and therefore what we have to work with is outdated. And it makes sense that the new criteria could develop with the evolution of social media usage. Given the strong alignment of criteria between the reverse and original boundaries, it is also possible that had a larger sample size been used, we would have been able to find examples of situational and gendered criteria with the reverse privacy boundary, especially since the criteria that we did find are the most commonly used criteria for the original version and would be the most likely to appear within a small sample size.
For the reactions to turbulence in reverse privacy boundaries, we decided to separate reactions as initial and concluding reactions. As we were listening to participants talk about turbulence, we began to notice that individuals had differing reactions to turbulence initially and at the conclusion of the turbulence. We also noticed that the actions and feelings of individuals varied greatly. It depended on the situation giving rise to the turbulence. However, the overall effects of individual feelings towards the turbulence and their relationships with those involved in the turbulence could be easily categorized into 3 reaction types: positive, negative, and neutral. For these reasons, we decided to measure the frequency of these 3 types of reactions as they occurred initially and at the conclusion of the turbulence.
Neutral reactions were characterized by a sense of apathy for initial response to turbulence and apathy or no relational change for the conclusion of turbulence. Positive reactions were characterized by good or happy feelings for initial reactions to turbulence and a benefit to relations for the conclusion of the turbulence. Negative reactions were characterized by discomfort, anger, fear, or other similar feelings for the initial reactions to turbulence, and damage to relations for the conclusion of turbulence.
Looking at the results for reactions to turbulence, we can see that very few were positive, while a large amount were negative or neutral. Having positive and a large number of negatives line up nicely with the original privacy boundary. Both of these reactions to turbulence were presented within the context of the original privacy boundary, and negative reactions were more common with the original as well. However, the presence of a large number of neutral reactions to turbulence was unique to the reverse privacy boundary and warranted further inspection and interpretation.
The biggest limitation for our study was the small number of participants. Which it created for a very small sample size that is not as representative of the general public as we'd like. This small sample size also meant that we could not interview a wide range of age groups. We had hoped for a more diverse group of ages to compare their responses.
Our study raised many questions that warrant further study. However, the most interesting and relevant ones that we suggest further study for were the possibility of relatability as a modern development and criteria in the context of the original privacy boundary. The possibility of reverse privacy boundaries being lower risk situations, and the exploration of positive turbulence reactions in high versus low risk situations.
If you have any questions or you would like to read the full paper, please feel free to reach out to any one of us. The paper goes more in depth and provides greater explanations, data, and suggestions for research. Our contact information can be found here on this slide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.